So yeah, so I'm Michael Cade. I'm a global field CTO. I'm just a technologist, right, that just likes getting into stuff. It's such a fancy title. But really, my background comes from the infrastructure and operations. I've very much the storage background, virtualization, and then into the cloud and cloud native world. And really what pushed me into this world was we made an acquisition of a company called Kasten 3 years ago, which is focused on data management when it comes to Kubernetes. And I was asked, go and speak to the DevOps community about data responsibility. A couple of open source projects that I'm involved in, both from a contributor, maintainer point of view, are this one here is Canister. Canister.io is our open source project that we've just donated to the CNCF landscape, and that's focused on integrating into databases to take consistent copies of those databases and store them. So when bad things happen, and they will, this is how you can get things back. Kubester is more related to storage within Kubernetes. How do I understand what the storage is that I'm using with my Kubernetes clusters? And then obviously 90 Days of DevOps that I'll talk about. Community is a massive part of what I do. I learn a lot from the community, but so really the whole premise of this repository that I've created is about giving back. You learn a lot from the community, so you want to give back. So I'm a member of a couple of community groups. VMware have the Tanzu Vanguard and the vExperts. HashiCorp have the ambassadors, and also the OpenUK ambassador program as well. So very much trying to be within the community, learning within the community, and sharing that journey as we all learn and try and bolster what we're trying to achieve in our businesses, but equally our projects as well. So what is open source learning? It's really about your choice, and you take it on in your own time. It's about producing, it's about sharing, and it might be that you're not a writer, you're not one of those that want to smash that like button and hit that subscribe button, but you can glean a lot of that. And if you're like me, over the pandemic, I literally switched from reading blogs on a daily basis to just watching videos on YouTube and learning a lot more about the ecosystem that I'd just been parachuted into. But it's about building on that knowledge, how we learn, and we're constantly learning. And also the accessibility of that content. So I've mentioned blogs. They're very cheap and obtainable. We can write even on GitHub pages. It's free. So we can share our own journey, our own perspectives on many different platforms. YouTube, you can create a video. You can hit record using open source software such as OBS, and then upload that video to YouTube. And you can start with that, smashing the like button and subscribing. But really, it's about how you learn. So you have the capability of being able to fork these learning repositories, and I can't take credit for starting this open source adventure around open source learning, but being able to fork that, change that, put your own perspective to that is an important part to whatever that need may be, whether it's you learn better by reading blogs or reading or watching videos. But if we take that, and I'll make sure these are available afterwards as well, because there's a lot of small text up the top there that really goes into a bit more of a generic description of what open source learning is. So with that in mind, let me introduce what is the 90 Days of DevOps and why am I stood here talking about something that really just started as a way in which I could write down my notes in a GitHub or a Git-based service such as GitHub in Markdown whilst learning on the job, basically. So 90 Days of DevOps, this is where I had to flip out of the OpenUK or the State of OpenCon slide deck, and we're going to gamify it a little bit as we go through. But as I mentioned, the mission of 90 Days of DevOps was, when I first started, was looking at other people in the community. Anaze does something called 100 Days of Kubernetes. We have lots of 100 Days of Cloud from a guy called Rishab and GPS, Gwyneth from Microsoft. And that just seemed like 100 days of cloud, 100 days of Kubernetes. That's the same topic over and over. I can't sit still for 5 minutes, let alone 100 days of something. So 90 Days of DevOps was really about breaking down all of the different areas of DevOps and concentrating on that for a 7-day period and then moving on to something else. A key part of DevOps, in my opinion, is we've got to be jack of all trades. We're not necessarily the master of one particular area of DevOps. So back in 2022, on New Year's Eve, I had this thought of, well, okay, if we think about January the 1st to March the 31st, that's exactly 90 days. So if I was to go and learn something every day and document that in a blog post type fashion, that would give me 90 posts talking about the project 90 Days of DevOps. But the key area is about learning in public. We all have different perspectives. We all will leave this conference and we'll go back to our day job and we'll be learning things that different things and different perspectives, and we'll all have that. And being able to then highlight that and give that back to the community is an important fact of open source learning. So key area though is we're never going to be done learning. A lot of you either will be developers, you'll be DevOps engineers, cloud engineers, systems administrators, DevRel, and various different roles and responsibilities in between. And the key part of that is share your learning, getting out there, writing something down, and it might just be notes, because I guarantee you, once you start writing that first blog, go back and look at that first blog in 3, 4, 5 years, you'll think you're a terrible writer. But ultimately, when you go and find yourself on Google, when you're trying to find out why something's not working, and you find your own blog, that's pretty satisfying, even though you forget when you get a little bit older that you actually wrote it in the first place. And make content that you wanted at the time of learning. Like if you find a bug or you find an intricacy within a product or a project, document that, because that will help someone else, or create a video or create a demo of that. You don't always have to show your face in that video. Like it might not be as out there as some of the YouTube influencers, but really the point is about making the content that you would use or that you wish you'd have found at the time. So a bit about the project. So there's a lot going on here, including the bouncing character. But this was never, the beginning of 90 Days of DevOps was me starting out writing those blogs, writing those notes about the project. You'll see here, and this is the same about little brief of what it was. I'm using this repository to document my journey learning about DevOps. Massive topic, more than you're never going to learn DevOps in 90 days. But it's about beginning that process on the 1st of January through to March the 31st and going through some of those fundamentals or the foundations of DevOps and some of the tooling, the technologies, the processes that come with that. We created a Discord, over 1,500 members in there. And you can see from a star, and I appreciate that GitHub stars are a bit of a vanity metric. They don't necessarily say much about the project that's in there, but a lot of, especially companies with projects, they look at that metric. And this is where it kind of went a little bit crazy, because if we look at that first 4 months, which obviously, bearing in mind it was just 3 months, then we started to see it climb. It's ridiculous how people jumped on this and started talking about it and sharing the project. The other key part to this is the contributors. Being able to offer up the ability for translation. We've had, in fact, you probably can't see, just under the Discord there, we've actually had contributors translate the repository into different languages so that they can help their communities in different languages that aren't just majority English speaking, which I find the most amazing stat, because someone's taking my poor grammar, my poor spelling, and fixing that and translating that with that as well. The other important part here is when big companies such as Microsoft, Red Hat, etc., just to name a few, start sharing this, and you can see where the stars are coming from. This is actually using Another open source tool called OSS Insight, great project if you've got those little projects that you want to see where they're being used, what countries, etc., where the contributors are coming from. This is a great way of being able to find that. But I was amazed by this stargazers. So these are the people that have starred the repository and where they came from. So you'll see Microsoft, you'll see IBM, you'll see Red Hat, you'll see VMware, you'll see Amazon in there. That's a pretty, for me, it's amazing that it's been shared amongst those onboarding teams, etc., to get a good grasp on DevOps itself. And the reason why I feel like it actually kicked off and started that trajectory on that is because one of the things around DevOps is there was no structured learning. There was no structure to, oh, you need to know a bit about Linux. You need to know a bit about containerization. That's great. We knew that much, but there was no telling people how this structured learning needed to be. And I think that's really why the success really took off. So the journey so far, so we started off in 2022. That was me writing that. It ended up being 110,000 words in 90 blogs, which is ridiculous in itself. Far too big to even be turned into a book. You can imagine what that book would be like to have up there and sign each copy. You'd only get 2 instead of the hundreds that people like Liz are signing up there. So then we continued in 2023 because we saw that trajectory and people were using this repo. It was like, right, okay, we need to do something again in 2023. So, but instead of me doing it all, there was interest from the community where they wanted to share their perspective, which I thought was a great way of being able to continue that journey. And one of the key areas that we completely missed out, and I think the world of DevOps kind of missed out before and up to 2022, was security, DevSecOps. So there's a theme around 2023 where we talk about DevSecOps, what it is, what are the principles of that, and kind of tie that into the overall learning journey, as well as then getting into other areas of DevOps, such as looking at AWS, looking at Python as a programming language, looking at other technologies that we use there. And then fast forward to what we're currently in, 2024, I wanted to go a little bit more audacious, and I opened a call for papers on Sessionize, thinking we're probably only going to get 30 sessions here. And we ended up getting 150 sessions of people sharing their perspective, but in video format now. So we've done a lot of writing. All of the 2022 and 2023 are writing blogs, basically, for each session. 2024, we flipped to that YouTube, that smashing the like button, hitting the subscribe button. But we're on day 38, and we're continuing that journey of releasing a blog every day for the next 50 odd days or 45 days. So where it started was to really look at what is and why do we use DevOps, and as you go round the clock, you see about learning a programming language, and each one of these, and I'll show you shortly what that repo even looks like and how it's broken down. But basically, learning a programming language, we touch on the fundamentals of that, because if you're in or looking to get into DevOps, you don't necessarily need to know the complete intricacies of computer science and a programming language, but to get a good grasp on how to build a CLI, how to build an API, how to build automation, then you need to know a little bit more about that programming language. I chose Go to begin with because Casting K10, as I mentioned, the company we acquired is written in Go, as is a lot of the cloud native ecosystem tools. I wanted to at least be able to look at some code and understand what it was doing. Again, remember, this is just me making notes to begin with. Is it the right language to learn if you're looking to get into DevOps? I'm not going to put that out there as an argument, but maybe Python would be a little bit better. But yeah, this was serving my purpose at that time. But also looking at the fundamentals around Linux and understanding the Linux basics. There's no good just jumping straight into Kubernetes if you don't know Linux, if you don't know networking, if you don't know containerization. So we walked around that clock, and I'll just choose out a few. But really, I would say that having an understanding of these DevOps topics and what they mean is a great way of just getting that foundational knowledge of DevOps. So what, at the end of 2022, I would say I had writer's wrist, but I didn't because it was all typing. But 90 days, 90 blogs, 110,000 words, and that was when we really elevated that up to 10,000+ stars to begin with, which gave me that idea of this is something. We need to continue this project. People are learning something, hopefully, from this. And I have this rule in my head that creating content takes a lot of time, but if it helps one person, then it's well worth doing, even just one person. So this is the repeatable, even though sometimes you'll create a blog post or a video or something, and you think, I've spent so much time on this is going to help so many people, and it absolutely flops. But if it helps one person, then it's worth doing. And it was definitely my perspective and my learning along that journey. So hopefully this just plays. Yeah, so we started off, I wanted to learn GitHub. Best way to do that is by using Git and GitHub or Git-based services. And if you go to that repo, there's QR codes scattered across this slide deck if you wanted to jump to it. And within that, this is the first 2022, you'll see it's split out into introduction, what is and why do we use DevOps, learning a programming language, maybe you already know a programming language, so we can skip over that. But each of the sections, they start with a big picture, what is it, and why should we care about that from a DevOps perspective? And then it gets through some theory, and then we get hands-on with that as well. There's hands-on scenario to every module here. But if you already know Linux because you've come from an infrastructure background, then maybe skip over that or skip to the end of that, go to a different module, and you can start to put your own structured learning together. Fork the repo. I think we're well over 500 forks of the repo as well, where people are telling their own story. You just have to search for 90 Days of DevOps on YouTube, and you'll see so many people talking about their own journey, which is incredible. 2023 edition, as I mentioned, was more about asking some help from some friends. No one needed to see another 110,000 words from me. So going out there and speaking to some people that are in the ecosystem that already talk about this on a daily basis, things like secrets management. Brian Krausen, he's done an incredible job with HashiCorp Vault. He doesn't work for HashiCorp, but he has a passion around secrets management. So he spoke about the big picture. What is it? What is the theory behind that? And then he runs through some scenarios for that as well. We cover AWS. We cover Red Hat OpenShift to go a little bit deeper into that Kubernetes world. We talk about Armo. We talk about MySQL and databases in general, which is I could do a whole session on databases as well. So if we go into 2022, click on that first link or that image. Again, it's ordered the same way. So if we go into that, each of the authors, they submit their PRs, and as a group, we merge that into the main branch. And you can see again, maybe you know everything about secure coding, maybe you know everything about continuous build, skip over those, and you can go to the next one. But really, it's about the big picture, it's about the theory, and then it's about getting hands-on. A lot of us will learn by getting hands-on and learn by doing. A lot of us will learn by reading. The other thing I haven't mentioned or even shown in these mini demos is at the bottom of every page, there's a lot of YouTube links and free. One thing I joked in a longer version of this talk as well is my Udemy account is full of paid for like training modules, and I've spent a lot of $12.99s on Udemy courses, but they're all at 0%. I wanted a way in which I could make everything accessible. So every hands-on scenario that you see in here, but on the bottom of every page is a link to resources that will take you to a YouTube channel that will allow you to go a little bit deeper into those topics as well. Because you're not going to learn in depth any of the topics just by reading the blog that someone's put together. Okay, so we're fast forward to 2024. just conscious of time as well. And this, again, this was about how do we open this up to a wider community? How do we get people that have never spoken before to create content that we can put onto a wider YouTube channel, that more people can see what these people are doing and learn from their perspectives in the same way. The difference is that obviously we're using YouTube here and we're not documenting that in the repo, but the goal at the end of this will be to take all of those YouTube videos and put links and notes into each of these. So each session that we've had submitted, and there's a very long list, well there's 91 actually, because we're in a leap year, so I have to think of a new idea. But you can see here all the accepted sessions and some of the others that are accepted as, and none of these will go to waste. If it ends up being 150 days of DevOps, that's absolutely fine, right? They're all going to give perspective, they're all going to give different, and actually all of these sessions are different. They're talking about Pulumi, they're talking about OpenTofu, they're talking about Terraform, they're talking about cloud. You name it, there's probably something being covered in here. And each speaker has access to that markdown file that represents their day, and they can come and put speaker notes, they can put links to their slides, there'll be a link to their video. So we want to keep the emphasis is on that repository. Okay, so again, a bit more to unpack here. The YouTube QR will take you to the playlist on YouTube and the channel itself. As of today, we're on day 38. Actually, an hour ago, I scheduled another session to go up there. Basically, what I wanted to do as well is I wanted to take big speakers in the, say, well-known speakers in the industry and give them that 10th day. So whether it's day 10, 20, 30, etc., they get a keynote position on that. So April Edwards, who's at GitHub, she just did day 30, a great session on how GitHub delivers GitHub using GitHub. Bit of a mouthful, and I think she achieved getting the GitHub into the title the most times. But there's no, like, we don't go from day 1 to day 2 and there's 2 of the same topics. We've split up the topics so that every day you're going to be learning about something different. You're going to get a different perspective from different people. So the current status is we're on day 38, and as you could see, we had a long list of other sessions that are coming. My ask is, if you find it useful, great, go and have a look at the repo. But also, if you want to get involved, if any of you have a session that you'd like to submit, I'll have my contact details in the next slide, and more than happy to upload that. I like to think of myself as a facilitator to get this into the community. I'm not in any way, this isn't sponsored. No, I've been very clear. I've had companies come up to me, some big licensing companies come to me and ask, could we have a slot on here? And I've actively said no, because that doesn't ride very well from a community perspective if you're just hearing about certain companies. And this comes from the community. I want this to evolve, or we want this to evolve to help us as a broader community as well. So if you did have a session or any feedback, or just wanted to reach out and have a conversation about maybe how you could start your own little learning journey that might end up being a big learning journey that you can share with the community, I've got a bio drop link there, another shout out to another open source project that's going really well with Eddie and his community. But if you have that idea for a session, then please let me know. But also please just check it out. I've purposely made or tried to influence the sessions to be around that 20 to 40 minutes, because that's how I want to learn. I'm learning from these videos as well. But I want everyone to stay tuned on that. And with that, that's the session. If there's any questions, then
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, big fan of your work.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for putting this out. It's very hard to get into DevOps or even in open source contributions, so this is definitely helpful. I want to ask you, there are millions of open source repos. It's very hard to get visibility or people to know about your work. So how did you get from 0 to, let's say, 100 people knowing about it, or 0 to 1,000 stars? How did you do that?
So the majority of this, so as I was boring everyone with my tweets every day, 1 of 90, 2 of 90, 3 of 90, and the topic that I was covering, this isn't the first rodeo when it comes to like sharing content. I've had a blog on vzilla.co.uk in the vSphere space that has over 20,000 views a month, which is dwindling away because I'm not putting any new content there because I'm concentrating on this. But about having that brand and having the ability to leverage the following that you potentially have built up over time on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on social media, that's really helped with the, I guess, the explosion of people knowing about this. Cool. Probably if there's any more, maybe one or two.
Just a question. If people want to contribute and actually create content for this, is there any criteria for that? Do you have to have any minimum standards, certain length of time, certain format, so on and so forth?
No, I mean, like there's now a group of us that are maintaining the project. It's not just me, so that because again, I don't want me to just be the gatekeeper of this, because other people learn in different ways. I've brought in different people from the community that aren't just an infrastructure background. Very early on, there was actually people trying to submit their version of day 29, for example, on GitHub. The only thing I've said there is like look at forking the repo and creating your own version of that, because the amount of people that I speak to at events like this and others is the amount of people that will click through the forked repos and actually see the changes that people have made, the uploads, the perspectives that they've given. So I don't think there's no rules. There's a contributing.md on the repo, which is more of a community guideline, right? Just be kind, share good stuff, or share informative stuff. We don't really want opinionated stuff on that as well. But yeah, no real guardrails.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Michael.
Awesome. Thank you very much.